Good morning, friends. Today we are going to learn Neoclassical Criticism Part 2nd. In the first part, we learn about the Neoclassical criticism, what is the concept of Neoclassical criticism, and how it has a long period, and how Neoclassical critics try to criticize and as well as appreciate the classical criticism and followed the rule of classical criticism. In this part, we learn what are the opinions of Samuel Johnson's on on preface to Shakespeare. He written down on the Shakespeare's works, Shakespeare's comedy, Shakespeare's tragedy. He has opinions on Shakespeare's writing and Shakespeare's literature, though it is a poetry, though it is a his comedy or a tragedy. See, Shakespeare's Shakespeare's enduring appeal, how he is appealed approach towards antiquity. He believes in old age, old times, antiquity of the time. Some people lament that the dead are praised unreasonably. They hold that the criteria of evaluating a writer should be the excellence of his work and not his antiquity. They are generally people who have nothing to contribute to the universal truth, and therefore try to win fame by offering controversial arguments or hope that posterity will be kind and sympathetic and will bestow them with the name that their contemporaries deny. He has approach towards antiquity. He believes in the classicism and try to follow it. Admittedly, antiquity has its blind votaries who indiscriminately praise everything merely because it dates back to the remote days. It is also true that spotlighting the merits of the ancients and the faults of contemporaries is more congenial to many critics. As long as an author is alive, the tendency is to judge him in the light of his worst work, and after his death, the practice is to regard his best work as his most characteristic and judge him from that viewpoint. So, according to Johnson, he said, you should not treat author after his death, whether he is only good author. You should admire him as a good author and satire on him as a bad author as well. You should focus on his good and bad qualities. Continuation of esteem, a criteria of merit. The criteria for judging works of art cannot be absolute, as in case of works based on scientific principles. Johnson says that in the field of literature, excellence is not absolute but gradual and comparative. In weighing works of literature, the only test that can be aptly applied is length of duration and continuation of esteem. So, according to Johnson, we should not treat as or work should not based on scientific principle cannot treat or judge as per the scientific principles, but we should be gradual and comparative and try to compare those works. The only test that can be aptly applied is length of duration and continuation of esteem. So, this kind of criteria of merit is applied by Johnson to Shakespeare's work. It is quite natural that mankind examines and compares works which they have possessed long, and in case they go on praising them. Johnson says that we go on praising Shakespeare, but it shows that they have found them to be really valuable. No production of genius can be termed excellent until it has been impartially compared with other such works, just as no one can call a river deep unless he has seen and known several rivers and judges the particular one in comparison with the others. So, Johnson says that we should compare the work of Shakespeare with and other literature. So, we have to judge that work or it has been impartially compared with other such works, same kind of works. A literary work is primarily tentative and can be estimated only by its proportion to the general and collective of humanity, as this ability has been discovered in a long succession of endeavors. Scientific works can be adjudged perfect because of their objective base, whereas the greatness of Homer's poems has not been given any specific explanation except that they have appealed to generation after generation. The reason why the works of antiquity are held in esteem is not blind adulation or superstitious belief in their superior wisdom, but the fact that they have stood up to scrutiny of time. So, according to Johnson, literary work is primarily tentative and can be estimated only by its proportion to the general and collective of humanity. According to Johnson, the reason why the works of antiquity are held in esteem is not blind adulation or superstitious belief in their superior wisdom, but the fact that they have stood up to scrutiny of time. So, Johnson gives the opinion on Shakespeare's literature in this preface to Shakespeare. Next part, the enduring eminence of Shakespeare. The works of Shakespeare have come to assume the status of a classic. They are credited with enduring fame and respect, as these works have cultivated outlived one whole century, which is the test normally laid down in such cases. They have attained the prestigious position of antiquity. The topical allusions to local customs and prevailing manners in Shakespeare's works are no longer relevant, and his works are read for the literary pleasure they provide. His works can hardly support any faction at present, nor can they satisfy the variety or feelings of enmity in people closely associated with him, since all such people have passed away. It is astonishing that they have withstood changes of manners and customs and are read just for the pleasure they offer. They are thus praised disinterestedly by generation after generation. However, it would not do to blindly believe that human judgment is never infallible, even though a few works have met with popular approval for a long period. It is possible that this approval may have been based on prejudice or fashion. It is indispensable, therefore, to probe into the facts which enable the works of Shakespeare to attain and retain the respect and or esteem of his countrymen. So, in this part, we learn how Johnson tried to criticize as well as praise to Shakespeare, and he is really a great opinions or great criticism on Shakespeare. So, in the next part, we will learn about again the second part or next part on Johnson's opinions on Shakespeare's in his preface to Shakespeare. Till then, thank you.